High level, what is PriceLabs? We are a revenue management platform that is used by owners and property managers. And I say owners and property managers because everyone in the industry understands it. I'm not sure if the terms are any different in Australia, but owners, people who own the houses themselves, and property managers who manage the houses on behalf of owners, right? So it's used by both. And we have three key products that I'm going to touch on later today, but we're primarily known for our dynamic pricing product. But the other two products are market dashboards and portfolio analytics. And we do revenue management for vacation rentals, apart hotels, serviced apartments, RV parks, and that list goes on and on, right? As long as we're talking about room night revenues, right? So if you also have a spa and something else, we don't really do that. Our specialty is room nights. Um,
Yeah.
the in terms of team, we're a globally distributed team. I know we've also added someone in Colombia now and someone in Spain, but primarily we are a US based company. We were founded in 2014, so 7 years ago in US, and I was living in US at the time. Now the team is distributed between US, Brazil, Portugal, France, India, Colombia, and Spain. We price about 100,000 properties. So when I say properties in context of PriceLabs, that is number of available units. So if you have a hotel with 30 units, that would be 30 properties in our worldview, right?
Yeah.
In terms of geographies, we're a global company in terms of customer base. We have a bunch of customers in Australia too. If because I say Australia because a lot of the folks here are from Australia. We US is our, of course, primary market, but we also have customers in 95 plus countries today. Cool. Like I mentioned, we have three different products: market dashboards, dynamic pricing, and portfolio analytics. Market dashboards. Actually, let me address the dynamic pricing first. That's the automated pricing and minimum stay product, right? So what we're trying to do there is every night we're trying to adjust your prices based on what's happening in the market and what's happening with your performance, and we are updating those prices every day. This is a 30-day free trial. This is the product that integrates with NewBook and sends data back and forth between NewBook and us so that we can actually update your prices, right? There is market dashboard product, which is if you're familiar with bench data products or benchmarking products, right? You can essentially see short-term rental data of Airbnb and VRBO, to saying what's happening in the markets, right? If you're using dynamic pricing product, you don't really need market dashboard products. And portfolio analytics is our business intelligence tool. You already have certain KPIs available, say in NewBook, but in portfolio analytics, you can see KPIs in terms of what's happening with your revenue, what's happening with your lead time, what's happening with your RevPAR, and all of those kind of things. And if some of these terms don't seem familiar, when you work with one of our onboarding agents, they also help you understand what these terms mean. Cool. I'm today going to focus specifically on dynamic pricing. And
Fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what is dynamic pricing, right? Dynamic pricing is essentially, and all of us have seen this in some way or form. Maybe a bunch of you guys do this. Um, it's essentially adjusting your rates and availability frequently based on various factors. Put simply, you've always seen this, like all of us have booked a flight at some point or the other, and you would have seen you book your flight, it's a certain price, but if you book 10 days in advance or 30 days in advance, the prices could be very different, right? What they're trying to do is they're trying to see how many seats have been booked, and based on that, they're trying to say what the demand is going to be, and they're going to adjust rates. This is what in essence dynamic pricing is. It's based on various factors, factors like market demand, seasonality, day of week, events, lead time, listing performance, and the list can go on and on. You're in a ski market, so is there sun around? Like what weekends are more sunny than others, etc., etc. Right? Um, so very often, prices look like what I've here, like 100. My property sells at $100 and they're flat at $100. You all are skilled operators. Maybe it looks a little bit like for certain weekends I price higher, for certain seasons of the year I price higher, but very often that does not change a whole lot. It is what it is. That's what I'm going to charge. Um, what a dynamic pricing could look like is something like this, where instead of a flat price, I'm adding in seasonality, I'm adding in day of week, I'm adding in holidays, I'm adding events, I'm adding in lead time. And every day, PriceLabs will go in, will look at what's happening in the market, will look at what's happening with your property, and adjust your prices. And then on top of this, we have a bunch of customization tools. I have another way of showing this slightly. When I say every day we will go and look at it, right? It's not as visible right now, but if you because of the size of this graph, but if you look at this, there is can you guys still hear me? Something just
Definitely.
went
Yep.
very quiet. Okay.
No, we
Uh,
just muted someone's mic there, Richie, but
got it, got it, got
continue,
it.
continue.
Okay, I thought it was like, yeah, okay. Anyway, so um, so yeah, sorry, lost my train of thought there. So you can see like this is a pricing graph that PriceLabs generates every day, right? So in this, yesterday, when PriceLabs would have calculated what's happening in the market, they would have priced on August 28th this property at 280. But now they, like, when we went in today again to look at what's happening in the market, etc., etc., the prices would have moved to 293. And because NewBook and us integrate, every 24 hours, we're going to go in and update those rates back into NewBook, and NewBook will float that out to whatever channels you connected on, including your website. So any third party channel and your website will have that price of 293, right? Now that delta might seem, that $13 may seem small, but $13 accumulated over 365 days and accumulated over your count of properties can actually be a very big number. And it's
Quite
not just those
significant.
$13. It can be like in this around August 14th, you see a very high peak, right? Something's happening in the market and you're changing this, right? Um, do the back to make sense? If anyone has any questions around this, uh, feel free to type it in now. This is an important aspect. We look at a lot of factors, primarily the seasonality, primarily the day of week, like your weekends book a lot more than weekdays, etc., etc. Your holidays and events and lead time, and all of this is hyper local. By hyper local, I mean because when we also connect with NewBook sends us the latitude and longitude of your property, every single property,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
And so we take that latitude and longitude and we build a hyper local demand model by looking at 350 closest properties to your property. And based on that, and there we look at Airbnb properties and booking.com hotels. So we look at two different things, and we build a very hyper local model based on your property location. And based on that, we come up with all of these things. Holidays and events work in two ways. Holidays and events, we one have a set of holidays that are in our database. These are calendared holidays that happen every year on the same date. And then secondly, we looked at pacing information in terms of history to saying, are there certain demand days that were higher priced and should we be adjusting them in the future? And then number three, we look at what's happening in terms of availability in the market. And if there are certain days where we are seeing availability move too fast, or like people starting to book too fast, that's an indication for us for an event, and we'll adjust rates accordingly. This I'm sure makes sense. So every 24 hours, we'll go in, we'll look at what's happening in terms of price, and we may adjust it. This is something that a lot of people don't always understand. And let me talk a little bit about what's happening in the graph here. So like before, the black line is your price, the pink line is 25th to 75th percentile of the market, sorry, 50th to 75th percentile of the market, and the gray band is 25th to 50th percentile of the market in terms of price. Yeah, let me repeat that. Gray is 25th to 50th percentile of the market in terms of price band, and the pink line is 50th to 75th percentile of the market, right? In terms of price band. A
Mhm.
lot of people think of their position in the market as something static. Like I am at the 60th percentile, or especially if you've come from very strong hotel revenue management background, a lot of people think of their location in the market as a very static. I'm at the 50th percentile, or I'm at the 75th percentile. The reality is that there are certain days when you can be priced very high outside the market because everyone's going to get booked, right? No matter what happens, and there you want to take the risk of pricing your properties high, and if it still doesn't get booked, maybe slightly closer in, you can drop prices. But 6 months, 8 months out, you don't want to get booked at a very low rate because there is a lot of opportunity in the market for you to extract money, right? Versus, so what I'm trying to show here is, if you'd see, this black line is not always static at one price point where this pink thing is. I am going and almost touching the 75th percentile here. I am almost coming down to 25th percentile here, and here I am crazy out of the market, out of 75th percentile. Now you may want to consider the quality of your property to saying, do I want to be this crazy out of the market, right? But what's happening here is, it's maybe like a um, I think this happens in Gold Coast. Gold Coast has the school weekends, right? Like in August. Is that correct, Bradley?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe it's the school weekend in Gold Coast, right? And like every property is going to get booked, right? Especially the good looking, very good properties are going to get booked, and your property is going to get booked, right? And if you're still pricing yourself the same as what you were pricing last year, why not add 20% more and try it? If it doesn't get booked, you still have August, right? So you still have 8 months to go. Um,
Yep.
Start reducing them slowly, right?
Yep.
Um, that's in essence what dynamic pricing also looks like. You're testing various price points in the market to saying, do I have a potential to book here, right? If it doesn't exist, then you'd reduce or increase, right? Cool. Net net, if you're familiar with your pricing calendars, and I know in NewBook it looks like a tape chart, but
It does. It's
essentially,
a rates chart. Yep.
rates chart, right? But essentially, what it could look like is that every day you have slightly different prices. Hopefully that makes sense. This is the essence of
Yep.
it. I know I've rushed through this, but if you have questions, we're here to answer.
Definitely.
The second thing that I want to say around dynamic pricing is, we just touched dynamic pricing. There is also something called as dynamic stays, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have stay restrictions. And again, this goes back into new book, right? What we're trying to do is, say maybe for weekday and weekend, you want to have different stay restrictions. You have 2 nights on weekdays, 3 nights on weekends, especially if you're in cities, and seems like a lot of you are, right?
Yep.
Maybe people book their weekends a lot more, or if you're right down in the central business district, and if it's a business driven traveler that you have, maybe they book weekdays more. So you can adjust and fine tune your saying telling PriceLabs that, hey, weekdays make it 2 night stays, weeknight 3 night stays, or any number, and every day we'll go in and adjust that. You can also tell us minimum stay for often bookings. What are often bookings? I'm sure all of you have dealt with some kind of gaps that you get in your calendar, right? Especially if you take longer bookings. So if I have, say, in this example, it's not as obvious, but say I had a 7 day minimum stay. I get a 7 day booking, I get a 5 day gap, and I get another 7 day booking, right? And so if it's a 5 day gap, you suddenly can't, like, it's unbookable because your minimum stays or stay restrictions were 7 days, right? What PriceLabs will do is, it'll look at that, and if, as long as you've told PriceLabs it's okay to go down to 5, we will automatically go in there and adjust it to 5, so that you don't have to manually go in there and make such tweaks, right? um, the other thing that happens is the next one, which is minimum stay for last minute bookings. What we're trying to say there is, you can say, my normal is 3 days or 5 days or whatever, but if it's within the last week, drop it down to one night. I'm okay with taking a one night booking in the last night, because uh, vacation rentals or any kind of hospitality accommodation is expiring inventory. By expiring inventory, I mean if it's not booked today, it's like it's gone, right? If you have a stay night today, sometimes you may want to drop those last minute stays if you can operationally manage it to take a booking if you aren't booked. And finally, this is something that I highly recommend. And it's a little bit of a behavior change for a lot of people. A lot of people who have been traditionally in the market do tend to book far in advance because there is a safety in terms of revenue that gets created, right? But sometimes you may want to play with and say, hey, really far out, whatever that number might be, that number could in certain markets can be 90 days, or in certain markets can be and I say 90 days, but here it says 90 nights, but 90 nights, or in certain markets, it could be 180 nights. But outside of that, I don't want to take that small chunky bookings, that annoying 2-day booking that comes through, and then a customer wants to book your place for a week or 2 weeks, and you're like, ah, I wish I had not taken this, right? So outside of a certain booking window, outside of your normal booking window, you may want to have slightly larger stay restrictions so that you can still take these large bookings. Cool.
So we've got
Um,
a bit of a question there,
yeah,
Richie, that's just popped up. It's actually a really good one. So basically what Helen is asking is, does this, or this section we're looking at the moment,
yeah.
take into account public holidays if the public holiday would be on a Monday? Okay, so here we have obviously public holidays that could fall on Fridays and Saturdays and long weekends. Would it be looking at that sort of information?
So yeah, so not on stay restrictions, right? Stay
Hmm.
restrictions don't adjust based on events and demands. Okay. The stay restrictions are fairly static, but a dynamic pricing and my screen struck. Okay, this will adjust. So, like your price calendar like this will adjust regardless of what day it is, right? If it's a day that we have seen historically having a very high demand, or we predict having a high demand, it will have higher prices
Yep.
regardless of the day of the week, right?
So
N-
something like New Year's Eve, as an example,
New
that would be
Year's
something
Eve
you'd
will
predict.
always have a fairly high price in most markets, I would say, unless it's a market that we see people move away from. But there
Yeah.
are rarely markets like that uh, that we've seen where people actually go away from. So yeah, New Year's Eve would have fairly decently high prices normally.
Yep. Thanks, Richie.
Um, of course. Cool. Um, we've of course not dived into what dynamic pricing is, but hopefully I've given you a little bit of flavor. The real question is, why should you implement dynamic pricing, right? Why should you even spend your time? And firstly, you've already spent 30 minutes, so I'm very thankful for that. Uh,
Yeah.
but essentially, one results in increased revenue and occupancy, right? We have a lot of customers. We today have about 10,000 customers pricing close to 100,000 properties with us, right? We have a lot of single unit customers, and we have customers who have few thousand properties. So we have that whole segment of customers. And most of these like generally see an increase in revenue and occupancy, right? Revenue primarily, occupancy is a sub result of it, right? And that number, a lot of people also ask me for that number. That number can range from, I have someone who has said uh, 200% increase in revenue, and they're a large property manager. We have a case study on the website. I would not say that we can increase your revenues by 200% because that's crazy. But that was because their prices were completely not optimized. But usually that ranges between 10 to 40%. It's a very common number for a lot of people to see. Um, but more importantly, what dynamic pricing softwares like PriceLabs do is they take the guesswork out of pricing. You're trying to
Yes.
guess, should I increase, should I not increase? And then you're trying to either you're not doing anything or you're trying to take a lot of guesses. We do things in a more systematic fashion. Uh, we also give you a lot of data so that you can make educated guesses, right? significant time savings. If you are already spending a lot of time optimizing your prices, you're going to love PriceLabs because it's going to be a lot quicker. You're going to have a lot of time savings. Work on strategy, not recurring tasks, because so what I showed you was a lot of automated stuff. But what you can also do in PriceLabs is you can set a lot of strategic tweaks to saying, like minimum stay was one of those tweaks that I showed you, but there are a lot of strategic tweaks. Like I want to make sure I don't, like, for any given weekend I want to sell it about at a certain price, or how I want to tweak my performance relating to market, right? How aggressive do I want to be on price, or do I want to be not so aggressive on price? So there are a bunch of strategy things that you can do, and so you're working on those strategies and not recurring tasks. Reduce errors is fairly obvious. If you're going in there manually trying to do this, and all of us are operators, right? Oftentimes we want to do so much, but the day just gets away from us. Something happens, or we're trying to type in something and we make an error. Because PriceLabs is every day going in there, as long as if you're spending those half an hour, 15 minutes, very in a very organized way, hopefully, and not making errors in those 15 minutes or half an hour, every day PriceLabs will go in and make sure that you're doing the right thing. And then finally, I say scale, because if you're a scaled operator, you can't always add a lot of headcount to solve this. And where PriceLabs allows you is that with one, if you're a small operator and don't have a headcount looking at revenue, that's fantastic. PriceLabs can help you. And if you're a large operator look with revenue management team, you can still scale with PriceLabs because it makes them more efficient, right? um, cool. I'll end with this again. I'll maybe as a three products. Dynamic pricing is 30-day free trial. Portfolio analytics is free. And market dashboards is $9.9 per month. Overall on Capterra, you'd see people rate us as 5 on 5. Ease of use is 4.8 out of 5. It's a little bit of a technical product. It does require a little bit of spending time to get familiar, because we are actually talking about changing your prices. So yeah,
Yep,
I can also address anything around how do we price. Bradley and I can address, if you
definitely.
wanted to get started, how to get started on NewBook and PriceLabs together. But that might be more a one-on-one conversation too.
Yep,
Um, with that, I think that was the last of my slides. That is the
it
last of my
is.
slides.